A cocky young action star publicly humiliates an older martial artist at a Hollywood charity gala, calling him too old to fight and washed up in front of rolling cameras. The arrogant hotshot and his crew laugh as they mock the quiet man in the back corner, demanding he prove himself worthy of respect. But what the smug actor doesn't realize is that this calm, silver-haired man is Steven Seagal himself, a true warrior who spent decades in real combat zones while Hollywood pretty boys played pretend. The young star has no idea, he just challenged a master who's forgotten more about fighting than most people will ever learn. As the mockery continues, the aikido legend accepts a demonstration with deadly calm, knowing this punk is about to learn the difference between movie violence and authentic martial arts. The cameras keep rolling, thinking they're capturing an old man's humiliation, but they're actually recording the moment arrogance meets reality. What happens when fake toughness faces genuine skill? Will the cocky star survive learning why legends earn their reputation? What happened next would shatter the young actor's ego for the rest of his pathetic career. Before we jump back and tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The flash of camera strobes painted the Beverly Hills Hilton in silver light as Jason Statham stepped from his midnight blue Aston Martin, the engine's purr commanding attention like a predator's growl. Saturday evening had dressed itself in champagne and diamonds for the Golden Hearts Children's Hospital Charity Gala, and Hollywood's elite gathered like peacocks displaying their plumage. Statham moved through the red carpet gauntlet with practiced precision, his tailored Tom Ford tuxedo hugging his lean frame like tactical armor. Every handshake was calculated, every smile measured for maximum impact. The cameras loved him, lean muscle wrapped in British confidence, eyes that promised violence delivered with surgical precision. Inside the ballroom, crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across tables draped in white silk. The wealthy and powerful raised glasses of Dom Perignon, their laughter echoing off marble walls adorned with photographs of sick children. The reason for tonight's theater of compassion, table 12 in the back corner. A man sat in quiet observation. Steven Seagal wore a simple black suit that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His silver-streaked hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and his dark eyes moved across the crowd with the patient awareness of a seasoned hunter. While others sipped champagne, he nursed a glass of water, declining the server's repeated offers with polite nods. Entertainment Tonight's Patricia Wells materialized beside Statham like a shark sensing blood, her camera crew positioning for the perfect angle. Jason, wonderful to see you. Tell us about working with the legendary action stars of the past. Statham's laugh cut through the ambient noise, sharp and dismissive. You mean guys like Steven Seagal? His voice carried just enough volume to reach nearby tables. Come on. Patricia, the man's pushing 70. He's too old to fight, too slow to matter. He should stick to making straight-to-DVD movies in Eastern Europe where nobody cares about quality. The comment drew appreciative chuckles from his entourage. Nearby celebrities nodded in agreement, their faces reflecting the casual cruelty of an industry that devoured its own. 20 feet away, Seagal heard every word. His expression remained unchanged, not the blank stare of someone offended, but the profound stillness of deep water. He placed his napkin on the table with deliberate care, rose with fluid grace that defied his age, and nodded respectfully to his table companions as he walked toward the exit. His path took him directly past Statham's circle. For a moment, their eyes met. Seagal's gaze held depths that made Statham's confident smile falter, like a child suddenly realizing he'd wandered into a tiger's den. Then the moment passed. Seagal disappeared through the ballroom doors while Statham, recovering quickly, delivered another punchline to renewed laughter, unaware that hotel security cameras had captured every second of his public humiliation of a legend. Dawn painted Seagal's Malibu home in shades of gold and amber, the Pacific Ocean stretching endlessly beyond his meditation room's windows. He sat in lotus position, breathing synchronized with the rhythm of distant waves, his phone silent on the nearby table despite 47 missed calls and hundreds of notifications. In West Hollywood, Jason Statham jolted awake to his publicist's frantic voice cutting through his penthouse quiet. Jason, you need to see this. The ET interview went nuclear overnight. Statham grabbed his phone, squinting at the screen. Hashtag too old to fight was trending globally. TMZ had picked up the story, Extra was running extended clips, and Access Hollywood was already booking follow-ups. His Twitter mentions had exploded, some praising his honesty, others defending Seagal with surprising vehemence. Jimmy Fallon's monologue played on his phone, the host mimicking Seagal's distinctive speaking pattern to audience laughter. Statham chuckled, his ego swelling with each retweet and share. This was publicity gold, controversy that positioned him as the voice of modern action cinema. Meanwhile, Seagal tended his vegetable garden with methodical precision, watering tomatoes and herbs as if the internet didn't exist. Each plant received exactly what it needed, no more, no less. The simple act of nurturing life provided more satisfaction than any trending hashtag ever could. You see this Hollywood bullshit, Steven? Bobby Martinez approached from the neighboring property, his Vietnam veteran's cane tapping against the flagstone path. At 74, Bobby carried himself with the dignified bearing of a man who'd earned his opinions through blood and sacrifice. Bobby waved his smartphone, its screen displaying Statham's smirking face. Kid's got no respect. In my day, we'd teach him some manners. Seagal continued watering, his voice carrying the calm of deep meditation. Anger is a poison we drink hoping others will suffer, Bobby. Mr. Statham is entitled to his opinion. You're too zen for your own good sometimes. Bobby shook his head, disgust evident in his weathered features. This punk needs to learn what real fighting men look like. Seagal paused, looking toward the ocean where morning fog was beginning. It's retreat. I have more pressing concerns than wounded pride. As Bobby walked away muttering about disrespectful young punks, Seagal noticed the unmarked surveillance van parked across the street. It hadn't been there yesterday, and the telephoto, lenses aimed at his property, suggested his visitors weren't tourists. He made a mental note, filed it away with dozens of other small details that might prove important later. The game was changing. He could feel it in the way shadows fell differently, in the subtle shift of energy that preceded violence. Someone was watching, waiting, planning. Monday morning's Beverly Hills sunshine streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows as Victoria Brennan reviewed box office projections on multiple monitors. Her Millennium Films executive suite commanded a view of the city's power corridors, a fitting throne for someone who traded in dreams and nightmares. A T-45. Victoria possessed the predatory elegance of a successful Hollywood executive, auburn hair styled to perfection, green eyes that could shift from warmth to ice in milliseconds, and an Armani suit that cost more than most people's cars. Her desk, a slab of imported Italian glass, reflected her image like a mirror of ambition. Her assistant announced Jason Statham's arrival, and Victoria's smile sharpened. He entered with the swagger of a man riding high on viral fame, his confidence filling the room like expensive cologne. Jason, darling, congratulations on the publicity. She gestured to entertainment news playing silently on wall-mounted screens. The studio loves your edge, your willingness to speak truth about the old guard. She slid a script across the glass surface. Apex Predator, a franchise that promised $200 million in production value and global distribution. This is exactly what modern audiences want: fresh blood, contemporary sensibility. As they discussed contract details, Victoria's voice took on a conspiratorial tone. You know, clearing out yesterday's heroes makes room for today's stars. Seagal, Stallone, Willis, they had their time. Now it's yours. Her words were honey-coated poison, feeding Statham's ego while serving her larger agenda. Every syllable was calculated to inflate his sense of importance, to position him as the future while dismissing the past. Miles away, Seagal returned from his morning jog to find trouble waiting at his front door. A manila envelope wedged between frame and wood. No return address, no postmark. The calling card of someone who preferred shadows to sunlight. Inside, 8 color photographs stared back at him. Young Eastern European women, ages 18 to 24, their eyes holding the hollow desperation of the lost. Missing person reports from LAPD accompanied each image. Bureaucratic language failing to capture the human tragedy each represented. At the bottom, block letters spelled out a message that chilled his blood. They know you're getting close. Back off or join them. Seagal moved to his study's locked filing cabinet, retrieving a thick folder marked Operation Nightfall. Months of research spilled across his desk: surveillance photos, financial records, shipping manifests, and connection charts that revealed a web of corruption spanning continents. He'd been tracking this network for 8 months, following breadcrumbs of evidence through shell companies and false identities. The warning meant he was close to something big, close enough to make powerful people nervous. His satellite phone buzzed with an encrypted message. Moscow's response was terse but telling. Package confirmed. Timeline accelerating. Exercise. Extreme caution. As Victoria and Statham sealed their deal with champagne and handshakes, celebrating the birth of a new franchise, Seagal prepared for war. Tuesday afternoon transformed Seagal's Venice Beach dojo into a sanctuary of disciplined movement. The converted warehouse breathed with the rhythm of 8 students practicing kata, their white GIs pristine against polished wooden floors that reflected decades of dedicated training. The space embodied traditional Japanese aesthetics: sliding paper screens, carefully arranged weapons racks, and the faint scent of sandalwood incense that spoke of meditation and inner peace. Seagal moved among his students like a conductor guiding an orchestra, offering gentle corrections with touches so subtle they seemed to come from the air itself. His students represented America's finest: 3 LAPD officers seeking mental discipline, 2 Marines on leave finding peace after combat, a UCLA medical nurse learning to heal herself, an aerospace engineer pursuing balance, and a high school teacher discovering inner strength. All wore plain white GIs with various colored belts, united in their respect for the ancient art. Remember, Seagal demonstrated a wrist throw technique with fluid precision. We don't seek to overpower our opponents. We redirect their energy until conflict becomes impossible. The front door exploded inward like a gunshot, shattering the dojo's tranquil atmosphere. Jason Statham burst through wearing designer workout gear that screamed expense and ego, followed by his cameraman Eddie Torres and social media manager Kimberly Cross. "Hope you don't mind the intrusion, Steven," Statham announced, his British accent sharp with mock politeness. "Thought we'd see what all the fuss is about with this gentle art of yours." The students froze mid-movement, forming a protective semicircle behind their sensei. Marine Sergeant Rita Vasquez stepped forward aggressively, her hands automatically moving to combat position. But Seagal raised his hand slightly. She immediately stepped back. Recognizing the master's authority, Eddie's camera captured everything. As Statham strutted around the dojo like a conquering general, touching equipment with casual disrespect and making dismissive comments about the dancing and choreography. He picked up a wooden Bakken sword, swinging it with the clumsy enthusiasm of a child playing with toys. "This is what you use instead of real weapons." He laughed, the sound harsh against the dojo's peaceful acoustics. "No wonder you stick to movies where everything's fake." The students exchanged tense glances, their collective restraint held in check only by their respect for Seagal's teachings. Off-duty LAPD Detective Marcus Webb quietly texted backup, his cop instincts screaming danger. Statham turned to face Seagal directly, cameras rolling to capture what he believed would be his moment of triumph. "How about we settle this once and for all, old man? Show these people what happens when tradition meets evolution." The challenge hung in the air like smoke from a fired gun, and Seagal felt the weight of decision pressing against his shoulders. This wasn't about ego or pride. It was about something far more dangerous brewing in the shadows of his investigation. The dojo fell silent except for Eddie's camera humming like an electronic predator. Seagal's students spread out, giving space while maintaining protective positions, their collective breath held in anticipation of violence. "I don't fight for entertainment, Mr. Statham," Seagal said quietly, his voice carrying throughout the space with the authority of deep water. Each word was measured, controlled, chosen with the precision of a master calligrapher. Statham smirked, bouncing on his toes like a prize fighter. "Course you don't. That would require actual skill." He threw quick jabs and crosses at the air, his movements sharp and aggressive. "This is fighting, speed, power, aggression. Not whatever slow-motion ballet you're teaching here." The students bristled at the insult, their faces darkening with protective anger, but Seagal remained centered in the storm of tension. "Aikido isn't about winning, Jason. It's about ending conflict. Right, very philosophical. Statham laughed, the sound echoing off the wooden walls like broken glass. But what happens when philosophy meets reality? He assumed a boxing stance, muscles coiled like springs ready to unleash destruction. Come on then, show me this ancient wisdom. Against every instinct screaming retreat, pressured by cameras and taunts, Seagal sighed and assumed a natural stance. His hands remained at his sides, weight evenly distributed, appearing deceptively relaxed. The transformation was subtle but complete, from peaceful teacher to something infinitely more dangerous. Statham rushed forward, throwing a straight right punch aimed at Seagal's face with all the power his trained body could generate. What happened next seemed to defy physics itself, in one fluid motion that appeared almost effortless. Seagal stepped offline, redirecting Statham's momentum with his left hand while his right found the actor's wrist. Suddenly Statham was airborne, spinning through space, then flat on his back, gasping for breath. 3 seconds total. No wasted movement, no visible effort. Seagal immediately knelt beside him, checking for injury with genuine concern. Are you hurt? He helped Statham to his feet with respectful gentleness. This is what aikido teaches. We don't destroy our opponents. We redirect their energy until conflict becomes impossible. Humiliated despite Seagal's respectful treatment, Statham jerked away from the helping hand, his face burning with embarrassment and rage. He glared at Eddie to stop filming, then stormed toward the exit. This isn't over, old man, he snarled through gritted teeth. Not by a long shot. Tuesday night's darkness embraced downtown Los Angeles like a predator's cloak as Seagal parked his black Toyota Prius 2 blocks from Building 47. The warehouse district slept fitfully, its industrial bones creaking with the weight of secrets and sins. Moving through shadows with practiced stealth, Seagal wore all black, tactical pants, long-sleeved shirt, and soft-soled shoes that whispered against concrete. His thermal imaging equipment revealed heat signatures inside the seemingly abandoned building, confirming intelligence gathered over 3 weeks of careful surveillance. Through a skylight, he observed the interior's nightmare reality. 12. Young women, mostly Eastern European based on overheard conversations, huddled in makeshift cells that reduced human beings to inventory. 3 armed guards patrolled with casual confidence, their weapons held with the familiarity of professional killers. Seagal's specialized camera captured everything. Faces, license plates, security arrangements, evidence of systematic human trafficking. He recognized 2 guards from his research, Dmitry Kozlov and Viktor Petrov, known associates of international syndicates that treated women like commodities. That a phone conversation in accented English drifted through the night air. Yes, the Hollywood event went perfectly. The new shipment will be ready for Saturday's auction. The clients are very excited about the fresh inventory. The speaker mentioned names that made Seagal's blood run cold. Entertainment industry figures, including someone called VB, who handles the celebrity distractions. The pieces of his investigation were falling into place with terrifying clarity. Suddenly, vehicle headlights swept the area like searchlights hunting prey. 4 SUVs arrived simultaneously, disgorging 8 heavily armed men in military style. Here, their movements were coordinated, professional, lethal. Seagal realized with sickening certainty that he'd walked into a trap. Someone had been feeding information to the enemy, turning his investigation into a carefully orchestrated ambush. His secure communications had been compromised, his movements tracked, his mission anticipated. Spotlights exploded to life, illuminating his position with the intensity of a movie set. A voice called out in Russian, its tone carrying the cold authority of someone accustomed to inflicting death. We know you're there, American. Come down slowly, or we start killing the girls. The choice was simple: surrender and die quietly, or fight and risk innocent lives. For Steven Seagal, trained warrior and protector of the innocent, there was no choice at all. Without hesitation, Seagal dropped through the skylight into hell itself. What followed was brutal efficiency born of decades merging military training with aikido mastery, a deadly dance where violence became an art form serving justice. He moved through armed men like water flowing around stones, using their own weapons against them with devastating precision. Gunfire erupted but found only empty air as Seagal redirected their aim into walls and machinery, turning their aggression into self-destruction. Within 4 minutes, 6 men lay unconscious, 2 had fled into the night, and Seagal was freeing captive women with gentle urgency. He spoke to them in Russian, Polish, and Ukrainian, his voice calm despite the chaos surrounding them. Police will be here soon, he assured them in multiple languages while guiding them toward emergency exits. Tell them everything you remember. You're safe now. But as the last woman escaped into freedom, Seagal noticed security cameras positioned throughout the warehouse. His heart sank as he realized they'd been recording everything, and someone would edit this footage to serve their twisted narrative. Wednesday morning's SWAT team arrest at his Malibu home played out like a choreographed media event. News vans lined his street as he was led away in handcuffs, the story breaking across every network with manufactured outrage. Steven Seagal arrested for brutal assault, screamed the headlines. The security footage, heavily edited, showed him attacking what appeared to be innocent businessmen in what news described as a vigilante rampage. Lost in the editing were the captive women, the drugs, the weapons, everything that would justify his heroic actions. By noon, Jason Statham was giving interviews from his Beverly Hills mansion, expressing shock and disappointment at his former colleague's violent outburst. The cameras loved his performance of righteous indignation. I knew he was unstable after our little disagreement yesterday, Statham told reporters with practiced sincerity, but I never imagined he'd go this far. Perhaps this is what happens when old action stars can't distinguish between movies and reality. His words were poison wrapped in concern, each syllable calculated to destroy Seagal's reputation while positioning himself as the voice of reason. The media ate it up, eager for a narrative that pit young against old, evolution against tradition. A.S. Statham's interviews played on every channel. Victoria Brennan watched from her executive suite, smiling coldly while feeding documents marked Operation Nightfall into an industrial shredder. Phase 1 was complete. The troublesome investigator had been neutralized, and her useful idiot was performing perfectly. Los Angeles County Jail's interview room 3 felt like a tomb as Seagal sat in orange jumpsuit and handcuffs, the metal table cold against his restrained wrists. His lawyer David Kim shuffled through charges that could steal 20 years of his life: aggravated assault, breaking and entering, weapons possession. The DA wants to make an example of you, Stephen, Kim said grimly. This could destroy everything you've built. The door opened and Detective Frank Kowalski entered, mid-50s with weathered features that spoke of 2 decades walking through humanity's darkest corners. He dismissed the lawyer and activated a small electronic device that filled the room with white noise. Signal jammer, Kowalski explained, his tired eyes holding depths of knowledge that few cops ever acquired. What I'm about to tell you stays between us. The revelation hit like a physical blow. Kowalski had been investigating the same trafficking network for 2 years. The warehouse raid was just one link in a chain extending into Hollywood's highest echelons of power and corruption. The charity gala you attended? Kowalski slid photographs across the table, surveillance images of the event's VIP room, showing men bidding on photographs of young women like livestock at auction. That was cover for a private sale. They were selling those girls to buyers from 12 different countries. Seagal studied the photos, recognizing several faces from the entertainment industry. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering, a network that used Hollywood glamour to mask international human trafficking. Your investigation was getting too close, Kowalski continued, his voice heavy with the weight of terrible knowledge. So they orchestrated this whole thing with Statham to discredit you, used his ego against him, turned him into the perfect distraction. Victoria Brennan emerged as the spider at the web's center, using her Millennium Films position to provide cover and recruit clients among wealthy Hollywood figures. The operation was sophisticated, protected, and utterly ruthless. Statham was played, Kowalski explained. They fed his vanity, manipulated his public statements, created the perfect storm to destroy your credibility. As the detective prepared to leave, 2 corrections officers approached the interview room. But something in their movements, too coordinated, too purposeful, triggered alarm bells in both men's minds. These weren't routine guards checking on prisoners. These were executioners come to silence the truth forever, and the real fight for justice was about to begin in the most unlikely of places. The two approaching corrections officers moved with predatory intent. Marcus Volkov and Tommy Chun, hired killers carrying concealed weapons disguised as standard prison equipment. Detective Kowalski's cop instincts screamed danger first. His service weapon clearing leather just as Volkov produced a sharpened metal rod. Seagal, still handcuffed to the table, transformed confined space into deadly advantage. He swung the heavy metal table to trip Chun while simultaneously snapping his cuffs using an aikido technique that redirected the chain's weak point against the table's edge. The sound of breaking metal rang like a gunshot. The fight was brutal and compressed. Kowalski exchanged gunfire with Volkov in the narrow room, while Seagal disarmed Chun using improvised weapons. Chairs became clubs, table legs turned into spears. Even his broken handcuff chain became a whip of steel. Within 90 seconds, both assassins lay unconscious, their blood pooling on institutional linoleum. "We have minutes before backup arrives, corrupt or otherwise," Kowalski panted, already moving toward a maintenance door he'd scouted previously. "The trafficking network has people everywhere, cops, judges, prison guards. They navigated industrial tunnels beneath the jail like rats fleeing. A sinking ship." Kowalski's preparation proved invaluable. He'd been planning this contingency for months, knowing the network would eventually move against anyone threatening their operation. They emerged in an underground parking garage 6 blocks away where a motorcycle waited like salvation. Kowalski handed Seagal a burner phone and thick envelope while sirens wailed in the distance. "Everything I've gathered on the network is in there," Kowalski said urgently. "Names, dates, locations, financial records. You're the only one I trust to expose this cancer." As police helicopters circled overhead and news crews reported Seagal's violent escape, the motorcycle disappeared into LA traffic. The manhunt would be massive, but they had precious hours before the net closed completely. Miles away in his West Hollywood gym, Jason Statham watched news coverage with growing unease. Something about the official narrative felt wrong, too clean, too convenient. The doubt was subtle at first, like a splinter working its way deeper into his consciousness. For the first time since this began, Statham wondered if he'd been catastrophically wrong about everything. Thursday morning's workout became therapy as Statham punched heavy bags with unusual intensity, his movements sharp with frustration rather than technique. News coverage of Seagal's escape played on multiple screens, each anchor describing a dangerous fugitive, with professional certainty that felt increasingly hollow. His trainer Miguel Santos noticed the distraction immediately. "Boss, you're throwing angry today. What's eating you?" Statham couldn't articulate the growing unease. The image of Seagal's calm demeanor during their dojo encounter contrasted sharply with the violent criminal narrative dominating every channel. The ease with which the older man had handled him spoke of genuine skill, not the desperate violence of someone losing his grip on reality. After his workout, instead of returning to his penthouse, Statham found himself driving to Venice Beach. He parked outside Seagal's dojo, wrestling with contradictions that refused to resolve. 20 minutes of internal debate ended with him approaching the building. Bobby Martinez swept the front steps with methodical precision, his weathered face hardening at Statham's approach. "You got some nerve showing up here, Hollywood." But something in Statham's expression, genuine confusion rather than arrogance, made the old veteran pause. The cockiness was gone, replaced by uncertainty that seemed foreign on the action star's usually confident features. "I need to understand what's really going on," Statham said quietly, his voice lacking its usual bravado. Bobby studied him for a long moment, then unlocked the dojo. Inside, he led Statham to a wall covered with photographs, Seagal with various military units, refugee camps, disaster relief operations. The images told a story that Hollywood had never captured. "You mocked a man who spent 15 years in places most people can't pronounce," Bobby said, his voice heavy with disgust and disappointment. "While you were playing pretend tough guy in movies, Steven was pulling real people out of real burning buildings." Each photograph was a revelation. Seagal training Kurdish fighters, distributing medical supplies in war zones, evacuating civilians from natural disasters. This wasn't the resume of a washed-up actor, but of someone who dedicated his life to service. Bobby showed Statham a newspaper clipping from 2019, Seagal receiving a State Department commendation for extraordinary service in counter-trafficking operations. The official recognition carried weight that no movie role could match. The man you humiliated on national television, Bobby said quietly, has saved more lives than you've pretended to save in all your films combined. Statham stared at the evidence of his catastrophic misjudgment, feeling his certainty crumble like sand. Thursday afternoon found Statham in his penthouse, mind reeling from Bobby's revelations. The comfortable certainty of his position had evaporated, leaving him adrift in a sea of uncomfortable questions. His phone buzzed with an encrypted message from an unknown number. "Mr. Statham, we need to talk. Your life may depend on it. SS." The message included coordinates to Griffith Park. Every instinct screamed trap, but something deeper, perhaps the first stirrings of conscience, compelled him to drive there alone, leaving behind security and handlers that he found Seagal waiting. In a secluded grove, no longer the peaceful sensei, but clearly a man operating in survival mode. Tactical clothing, alert posture, eyes constantly scanning for threats. This was the warrior Bobby had described, operating without Hollywood's protective bubble. "Thank you for coming," Seagal said simply, his gratitude genuine despite everything Statham had done. "I know this is difficult to process." Seagal laid out the truth with methodical precision. The trafficking investigation, the warehouse raid, how Statham had been manipulated into providing perfect cover for Victoria Brennan's operation. Each revelation struck like a physical blow. "She used your pride against you, Jason. She needed someone credible to discredit me, and your public comments gave her exactly what she needed." Statham's first reaction was denial, then anger. "You expect me to believe some conspiracy theory? That I'm just a pawn in your delusion?" Seagal produced Detective Kowalski's evidence folder. Photographs of the charity gala's hidden auction, financial records linking Millennium Films to shell companies, surveillance footage of warehouse trafficking victims. The documentation was overwhelming, undeniable. As Statham studied the evidence, his phone rang. Miguel's panicked voice cut through the afternoon quiet. "Jason, you need to get out of there. Men with guns just hit your gym looking for you." The call dissolved into static as both men heard approaching vehicles. Seagal drew a pistol while moving into defensive position, his transformation from teacher to warrior complete. "I believe they've decided you know too much," he said quietly. 6 black SUVs surrounded the grove like predators encircling wounded prey. Armed mercenaries in tactical gear emerged, their weapons trained on the two men who'd stumbled onto the truth of Victoria Brennan's empire. The peaceful afternoon exploded into violence as automatic weapons fire-shredded trees around them. Statham found himself fighting for his life alongside the man he'd publicly humiliated, learning the difference between movie violence and the real thing. Bullets whined through the grove like angry wasps as Seagal and Statham took cover behind a fallen log. "Stay low and follow my lead," Seagal instructed, his voice carrying the calm authority of someone accustomed to life-or-death situations. What followed was Statham's introduction to real combat alongside a genuine master. Seagal's movements were economical and precise, every step calculated, every action serving multiple purposes. His aikido training allowed him to redirect enemy fire and use attackers' momentum against them, while Statham's raw power and movie-trained instincts proved devastatingly effective in close quarters. Working together for the first time, they fought their way out of the ambush with shocking efficiency. Seagal's tactical expertise guided Statham's natural aggression, while the younger man's strength complemented the master's surgical precision. Within 10 minutes, 8 mercenaries lay unconscious and 2 vehicles were destroyed. Racing through LA traffic in a captured SUV, Seagal accessed the vehicle's encrypted communication system to contact Detective Kowalski. The intelligence he provided painted a terrifying picture of scope and sophistication. "Victoria Brennan's operation is massive," Kowalski's voice crackled through the radio. "She uses Hollywood charity events as cover for international human trafficking auctions, with buyers from organized crime families, corrupt politicians, and wealthy businessmen worldwide." The evidence showed payments totaling over $200 million in the past 2 years alone. The charity gala had been just the latest auction in a systematic enterprise that reduced human beings to commodities sold to the highest bidder. They moved the girls through a network of safe houses, then shipped them overseas using private jets registered to film production companies. Kowalski continued. Everything legitimate on paper, everything horrific in reality. As they studied photographs of Brennan's Malibu compound, a fortress-like estate overlooking the Pacific, the full scope of Statham's unwitting complicity became clear. His public mockery of Seagal hadn't been coincidental. It had been orchestrated, weaponized, turned into the perfect distraction. I've been helping monsters destroy innocent lives, haven't I? Statham asked quietly, his voice heavy with the weight of understanding. Seagal nodded grimly. But you can help stop them now. That's what matters. The compound sprawled across 12 acres of clifftop property, its multiple buildings and extensive security systems designed to protect secrets worth billions. Tomorrow night, it would host Victoria Brennan's largest auction ever, and their last chance to save dozens of innocent women from a fate worse than death. Time was running out, and they had nowhere left to run except straight into the heart of evil itself. Friday morning's darkness still clung to the abandoned San Pedro warehouse that Detective Kowalski had secured as their final sanctuary. Seagal and Statham prepared for what they both knew would be their last confrontation with Brennan's network, victory or death, with no middle ground. You fight with anger, Jason, Seagal observed as Statham pounded a makeshift heavy bag. That makes you predictable. For 6 hours, Seagal taught what Hollywood had never understood, the difference between aggression and controlled force. He demonstrated how aikido principles could enhance rather than replace Statham's natural combat instincts, turning raw power into surgical precision. Redirect, don't resist. Use your opponent's strength against them, Seagal explained while guiding Statham through flowing movements that seemed like deadly dance. In movies, you fight for entertainment. In reality, you fight to protect the innocent. That changes everything. Meditation techniques followed, breathing exercises too. Control adrenaline, mental disciplines to maintain focus under pressure. Statham, humbled by the experience, began understanding why his dojo demonstration had failed so completely. You weren't just showing superior technique, he realized aloud. You were trying to teach me something about myself. Meanwhile, they studied intelligence on Brennan's compound like generals planning siege warfare. Satellite photos revealed building layouts, security arrangements, potential entry and escape routes. The fortress commanded clifftop terrain with clear sight lines in all directions, a nightmare to assault, perfect to defend. Detective Kowalski arrived with equipment that transformed them from refugees into weapons of justice. Night vision gear, communications headsets, tactical firearms. His weathered face carried the weight of terrible knowledge. The FBI is finally moving on this, but they need 48 hours to coordinate with international partners, he reported grimly. You have until Sunday night before they raid the compound. The timeline was impossible. Too little time to plan, too much time for Brennan to disappear with her victims. They would have to move tomorrow night, during the auction itself, when security would be focused inward on protecting buyers rather than outward on perimeter defense. As sunset painted the warehouse windows gold, both men knew they were as ready as they'd ever be. But Kowalski's radio crackled with disturbing intelligence. All units, we have credible threat against the safe house. Multiple hostiles inbound. ETA 4 minutes. Their sanctuary had been compromised. The final hunt was beginning Friday. Evening exploded into violence as Brennan's mercenaries attacked the warehouse from multiple directions. Muzzle flashes lit the interior like deadly fireworks while Seagal and Statham, now operating as a coordinated team, held defensive positions behind concrete pillars. The battle was intense but brief. Their evolved partnership proved devastatingly effective against superior numbers. Seagal's tactical expertise guided Statham's raw combat ability, while the younger man's aggressive instincts complemented the master's surgical precision. They moved like partners who'd trained together for years rather than days. Within 15 minutes, they'd repelled the attack and captured 2 mercenaries alive. Under interrogation, the men revealed intelligence that chilled their blood. Tomorrow night, Brennan was hosting her largest auction ever at the Malibu compound. Over 60 buyers from around the world, one mercenary admitted through bloody lips. More than 40 women and girls being sold. It's her retirement party. After this sale, she disappears forever with enough money to buy her own country. The timeline had collapsed. They couldn't wait for FBI coordination. Too many innocent lives hung in the balance. Saturday would be their only chance. A two-man assault on a fortified compound defended by professional soldiers. Detective Kowalski provided detailed reconnaissance throughout Saturday. The compound's 12 acres of clifftop property featured multiple buildings, extensive security systems, and escape routes via both land and sea. The main auction would take place in the estate's grand ballroom, with buyers arriving by private helicopter and yacht. Saturday evening found them approaching the compound underwater, using scuba gear to avoid coastal patrols. The Pacific Ocean embraced them like liquid darkness as they swam toward the clifftop fortress where evil wore the mask of respectability. The infiltration went perfectly. They disabled perimeter sensors with practiced efficiency, neutralized exterior guards using non-lethal techniques Seagal insisted upon, and located the main building where the auction was taking place. Through windows, they observed the horrific spectacle of human beings sold like livestock. But Seagal's bonds snapped silently in that crucial moment, his hands free while maintaining the illusion of helplessness. Beside him, Statham drew inspiration from the older man's fearlessness, beginning to understand that true courage wasn't the absence of fear but the mastery of it. The final lesson was about to be taught with deadly precision, and Steven Seagal was ready to be the teacher. At 12:52 a.m., Seagal remained motionless despite his freed hands, waiting for the perfect moment. With the patience of a master hunter, Statham, following his mentor's example, suddenly laughed loudly, a sound so unexpected it cut through the hall's tense atmosphere like a gunshot. "You want last words, Victoria? Here's one, watch." The unexpected laughter confused guards for crucial seconds, their professional focus disrupted by the incongruity. Seagal exploded into motion, his first strike disabling the nearest mercenary with a nerve pinch that dropped the man instantly, without permanent damage to in the same flowing movement. He rolled backward, sweeping Brennan's legs and sending her gun spinning across marble floors. The buyers panicked, scrambling for exits while their purchased entertainment transformed into lethal reality. Seagal moved through the remaining guards like water flowing around stones, each technique demonstrating aikido's devastating efficiency. Pressure points rendered opponents unconscious, joint locks disabled weapons, redirected momentum turned their own force against them. Within 90 seconds, 8 guards were neutralized and chaos reigned supreme. Statham, still bound, used techniques learned from their brief training session to trip attacking guards and create additional confusion. His movie experience proved valuable in reading combat situations, anticipating movements, contributing despite his restraints. Together they armed themselves from fallen mercenaries while Seagal freed his student with swift knife work. "The women first," Seagal insisted, even as more guards poured into the building like angry hornets defending their nest. They fought running battles throughout the compound's corridors, engaging pursuing mercenaries while evacuating the 43 imprisoned women. Using keycards taken from defeated guards, they began systematic rescue operations that turned the fortress into a liberation zone. Detective Kowalski appeared in a doorway, service weapon drawn, but hands shaking with indecision. His weathered face reflected the internal war between corrupt necessity and fundamental decency that had defined his recent existence. "I can't let you leave," he said desperately, his voice cracking with emotion. "My daughter needs that treatment. Money. She's all I have left." Seagal's response was immediate and compassionate, cutting through the detective's anguish with simple truth. "Frank, help us save these women, and I give you my word, your daughter will get the treatment she needs." The promise carried absolute conviction, backed by resources and connections that wealth alone couldn't purchase. Honor still meant something in a world gone mad with greed. As Kowalski lowered his weapon, choosing redemption over corruption. Victoria Brennan's voice echoed through the compound's PA system with genocidal fury. "Kill them all. The women, the traitors, everyone. Leave no witnesses." The compound became a battlefield as Brennan's remaining mercenaries, following orders that abandoned all pretense of subtlety, hunted not just Seagal and Statham, but the innocent women they were protecting. The rules of engagement had dissolved into pure survival. Detective Kowalski, having chosen the right side, used his knowledge of the compound's layout to guide the escape effort. His police training proved invaluable as he engaged mercenaries with tactical precision while shepherding groups of frightened women toward the boat dock. The three men worked together like a unit forged in combat, each covering the other's weaknesses. Kowalski's law enforcement experience, Seagal's warrior expertise, and Statham's raw determination created an effective fighting force despite impossible odds. Carrying a wounded Romanian girl who could barely walk, Kowalski became separated from the main group during a firefight in the compound's utility corridors. Mercenary leader Boris Khrushchev cornered him, assault rifle trained on the detective's chest. "You always were too soft for this business, detective," Khrushchev sneered, finger tightening on the trigger that would end two innocent lives simultaneously. Statham appeared behind the mercenary like an avenging spirit, having learned to move with Seagal's stealth during their brief partnership. His powerful hands broke Khrushchev's neck with brutal efficiency that surprised even him. Movie violence made real through desperate necessity, but the action drew more enemies to their position. As automatic weapons fire filled the narrow corridor with death, Kowalski pushed Statham aside, taking multiple rounds in chest and abdomen. His sacrifice was immediate and absolute. Dying, the detective pressed a small detonator into Statham's hands with his last breath. "Compound's main power source," he gasped through blood-frothed lips. 30 seconds after you trigger it, everything goes dark. Get them out." Detective Frank Kowalski died, saving the man he'd initially betrayed, choosing heroism in his final moments. His sacrifice transformed him from corrupt cop to fallen hero, proving that redemption was possible even at the end. Statham knelt beside the body, understanding for the first time what Seagal meant about fighting to protect the innocent rather than for personal glory. True courage wasn't fearlessness. It was acting despite fear when others needed protection. Carrying Detective Kowalski's detonator and driven by newfound purpose, Statham found himself channeling everything Seagal had taught him about aikido philosophy. When two mercenaries cornered him in the compound's industrial kitchen, instead of responding with his usual aggressive brawling, he flowed around their attacks like water that he redirected the first man's knife thrust into the second man's shoulder, then used their combined momentum to slam both into a commercial freezer door. It wasn't the brutal efficiency of his movie fights. It was something more elegant, more controlled, more fundamentally dangerous. The transformation was complete. Statham had evolved from angry brawler to thinking warrior, applying principles that turned opponents' strength against them rather than meeting force with force. Each movement served multiple purposes. Each technique minimized harm while maximizing effectiveness. Meanwhile, Seagal had reached the boat dock with 37 rescued women, but realized Statham wasn't among them. Against every tactical instinct screaming retreat, he turned back into the compound to find his student. Unwilling to abandon the man who'd become more than an unlikely ally, he discovered Statham in the main hall, wounded but standing tall, facing the last 6 mercenaries, including Viktor Petrov from the original warehouse raid. Blood seeped from cuts on his arms and face, but his stance remained balanced, centered. "Come on then," Statham said quietly, his former cockiness replaced by calm determination that echoed his mentor's teachings. "Let's finish this properly." What followed was a masterclass in applied aikido principles. Statham didn't overpower his opponents. He used their aggression against them, turning the fight into a deadly dance where every attack became the setup for the next defense. When Petrov drew a pistol, Statham didn't dodge or duck. Instead, he moved inside the weapon's arc, redirecting Petrov's gun hand while his other hand found the pressure point Seagal had taught him during their brief training. The mercenary dropped unconscious without firing a shot. The remaining guards fell in quick succession, each defeat demonstrating how much Statham had absorbed in just 2 days of authentic training. He'd learned the difference between fighting and warriorship, between violence and justice. Seagal stepped from the shadows, pride evident in his eyes as he witnessed his student's transformation. "Now you understand the difference between fighting and protecting others." Statham nodded, finally comprehending what the older man had been trying to teach him all along. True martial arts wasn't about personal glory. It was about service to something greater than oneself. At 1:35 a.m., with the compound's main force defeated, Seagal and Statham advanced on the administrative building where Victoria Brennan had barricaded herself with 8 remaining elite guards, former Special Forces operators who represented her final line of defense. Statham triggered Kowalski's detonator, plunging the compound into darkness except for emergency lighting that cast everything in hellish red shadows. Using night vision equipment taken from defeated mercenaries, they infiltrated the building from multiple entry points like ghosts materializing from the darkness. The battle became a showcase of their evolved partnership. Seagal's flowing aikido movements created openings that Statham exploited with devastating precision, while the younger man's aggressive instincts complemented the master's surgical strikes. They worked in perfect harmony now. Teacher and student united in deadly purpose. In Brennan's executive office, they found her frantically destroying evidence, feeding hard drives into industrial shredders, and burning documents in metal waste baskets. Smoke filled the air as years of criminal documentation turned to ash. "You're too late," she snarled, her composed facade finally cracking under pressure. "Even if you kill me, there are others. The network is too big, too connected. You've saved a few dozen women, but thousands more will take their place." Her remaining guards, led by former Navy SEAL Marcus Webb, made their final stand among overturned desks and shattered computer equipment. Webb recognized Seagal as a fellow warrior despite being on opposite sides of this conflict. "I heard about your reputation," Webb admitted during a brief lull in combat, genuine respect evident in his voice. "Guess the legends were true after all." The final battle destroyed the office completely, with both action stars using the corporate environment as weapons. Office furniture became clubs, computer monitors turned into shields. Even the building's architecture became part of their arsenal as they fought through cubicles and conference rooms. Filing cabinets toppled like dominoes, plate glass windows exploded from the impact of bodies thrown through them, and expensive artwork crumbled under the weight of desperate combat. The fortress of corporate evil was being systematically demolished from within. As the last guard fell unconscious, Seagal still insisting on non-lethal takedowns even now. Victoria Brennan drew a concealed pistol, pointing it not at them but at her own temple with theatrical desperation. "You think this ends with me?" she screamed. "I'm just middle management in something much bigger than you can imagine." Victoria Brennan stood behind her destroyed desk, gun trembling at her temple, finger poised on the trigger of her own destruction. Smoke from burning documents swirled around her like the ghosts of her countless victims, while emergency lighting painted everything in shades of blood. The network spans 40 countries, involves hundreds of officials, moves billions of dollars annually, she said with bitter laughter. "Kill me, and someone else takes over in 24 hours. You've accomplished nothing but temporary inconvenience." Statham stepped forward, his instincts screaming to let her pull the trigger and end the threat permanently. Every action movie he'd ever made suggested the same solution: eliminate the villain and credits roll. His old aggressive nature surfaced like a rising tide. "Do it," he growled, his voice carrying movie star menace. "Save the taxpayers a trial and us the trouble of listening to your excuses." But Seagal placed a restraining hand on his student's shoulder, the touch carrying all the wisdom of decades spent walking the line between justice and vengeance. This was the most important lesson of all. "Jason, this is the crucial moment. True strength is knowing when not to kill." He addressed Brennan directly, his voice carrying the calm authority of someone who'd faced death countless times and emerged with his humanity intact. "Victoria, you're right that we can't stop the entire network tonight. But we can stop you, and we can use your knowledge to save thousands of future victims. That only happens if you're alive to testify." Brennan's laughter was bitter as winter wind. "You think I'll cooperate? You think I'll betray my partners and spend life in prison for your moral satisfaction?" Seagal's response revealed the depth of preparation that true warriors brought to battle. Intelligence gathered not just about operations, but about the human weaknesses that drove them. "Your daughter Rebecca attends boarding school in Switzerland under an assumed name. Your mother lives in a care facility in Miami. receiving experimental Alzheimer's treatment. The color drained from Brennan's face as he continued with gentle ruthlessness. They're both innocent in this, but how long do you think they'll stay safe once your partners realize you've become a liability? How long before someone decides loose ends need cutting? The threat to her family broke Brennan's resolve like a hammer striking glass. Her hand wavered, then slowly lowered the weapon as maternal instinct overcame criminal pride. "What are you offering?" she whispered, finally understanding that survival trumped martyrdom. As police sirens wailed in the distance. The FBI raid finally arriving. She surrendered her weapon and agreed to full cooperation in exchange for her family's protection that Sundays. Dawn broke over the compound as FBI agents swarmed the property like antibodies attacking an infection. Special Agent Rebecca Torres coordinated the massive evidence collection, while paramedics and victim services counselors treated the 43 rescued women who represented just a fraction of the network's victims. Seagal and Statham, exhausted and bloodied but victorious, watched from the clifftop as Victoria Brennan was led away in federal custody. The sight should have brought satisfaction, but both men understood this was merely the beginning of a much larger reckoning. Agent Torres briefed them on the scope of what they'd uncovered. Computer files revealed operations across 6 continents. Financial records showed payments to corrupt officials in dozens of countries, and client lists would trigger investigations from Los Angeles to Moscow. Her cooperation is already paying dividends, Torres explained, her voice carrying the excitement of someone witnessing the collapse of a criminal empire. "We've made arrests in 12 cities just this morning, and Interpol is coordinating raids across Europe and Asia." The rescued women, representing 14 different countries, would be reunited with families or relocated to safe houses while the broader investigation continued. Some would testify, others would rebuild their lives in anonymity, but all would carry forward the knowledge that justice was possible. 3 days later, Wednesday afternoon found Jason Statham facing dozens of cameras and reporters at his Beverly Hills mansion. Gone was the cocky arrogance that had characterized his earlier statements, replaced by genuine humility that transformed his public persona completely. "I owe Steven Seagal and the American people an apology," he began, his voice carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom. "My pride and ignorance nearly allowed evil to triumph. I publicly mocked a man who risked everything to protect the innocent, and in doing so, I aided criminals who profit from human suffering." The press conference became a masterclass in accountability as Statham detailed his transformation from ego-driven celebrity to advocate for justice. He announced the establishment of the Kowalski Foundation, named for the detective who died protecting trafficking victims, funded with $50 million of his own money. The foundation would support victim services, law enforcement training, and public awareness campaigns designed to combat human trafficking on a global scale. It represented the complete transformation of Hollywood ego into purposeful service. Media coverage shifted overnight from mockery to respect, but Statham no longer cared about public opinion. He'd learned that true strength came from serving others rather than serving oneself. 6 months later, Thursday morning found Seagal's Venice Beach dojo completely renovated and expanded, now serving as both training facility and resource center for trafficking survivors. The walls displayed photographs of the 43 women they'd rescued, each face representing a life reclaimed from darkness. Jason Statham, wearing a simple white GI with a green belt he'd earned through patient dedication rather than celebrity privilege, practiced basic kata movements under Bobby Martinez's watchful eye. The old Vietnam veteran had become his harshest critic and most valued teacher. "Your footwork's still too aggressive, Hollywood," Bobby critiqued with the bluntness of someone who'd earned the right to speak truth. "Aikido is about harmony, not conquest. Flow like water, not like a battering ram." Statham accepted the correction with good humor that would have been impossible 6 months earlier. His transformation from arrogant action star to humble student represented the kind of character development that Hollywood scripts could never capture authentically. Several rescued women had joined the dojo community, finding healing through martial arts training and mutual support. Elena Kozlova, the young Ukrainian woman they'd saved from the compound, now served as translator and advocate for new victims arriving through various agencies. "Sensei Steven saved my body," she told visitors during weekly tours. But learning aikido saved my soul. It taught me that strength comes from inner peace, not from anger or fear. In the dojo's office, Seagal reviewed reports from Agent Torres. Victoria Brennan's testimony had led to 347 arrests worldwide and the rescue of over 800 trafficking victims. The network was broken, though he knew others would eventually rise to take its place. The fight against evil was never truly finished. It was a daily choice to stand with light against darkness, to protect the innocent regardless of personal cost. This was the warrior's path, the sensei's burden, the price of living with honor in a world that often rewarded corruption. A afternoon training session began. Bobby Martinez joked about how the young hotshot finally learned some respect for his elders. Statham laughed without sting, no longer wounded by comments that once would have triggered his explosive temper. He'd learned that true strength came not from never being wrong, but from having the courage to admit mistakes and grow from them. Pride was the enemy of wisdom, and wisdom was the foundation of authentic power. The story concluded with Seagal in his garden at sunset, tending vegetables with the same careful attention he brought to everything in his life. A man at peace, knowing that sometimes the greatest victory was teaching another person to be better than they were. In the distance, the sound of students practicing kata drifted from the dojo, the next generation learning that true martial arts was about protecting the innocent, not defeating enemies. The circle was complete, the lesson passed forward, and justice lived on in hearts committed to serving something greater than themselves. If you like the story, please watch another story on our channel and subscribe to the channel.